Thank you very much, Lucian. I'm sure there'll be a couple of colleagues joining us just as we go through 10, but welcome everybody. Happy New Year to those that I haven't said Happy New Year to previously. I was just discussing with Lucian whether at what point in the month do you stop saying Happy New Year? But anyway, Happy New Year to everybody. And as if perfectly on time, I noticed Ming has joined the call. So for colleagues on the call, hi Ming. Ming is taking over from Sal as an interim for the authority, and hopefully we'll get to know everybody at the various meetings and sessions that he will join over the next period of time. We'll have a chance to say thank you to Sal at the end of the meeting. So welcome, Ming.
Thank you, Paul.
And you'll also see Prue has joined us on the call today, which definitely welcome. Thank you for that. In terms of our agenda, we have a vote on item number 32, which is the school's block budget. So by the time we get to 32, we will run down our list and take a vote from all attendees who are able to vote for that particular item. And item number 31, which is the high needs block budget update, I would like to just shuffle up the list to sit behind Sal's update on the high needs block. So we put item 28 and 31 following one another and then move on to the rest of the items. With that, if we can move on to apologies, item 24 on the agenda. Does anybody have any apologies that they would like Lucian to note? And Lucian, if you could tell us who you've been notified has apologised. Great morning, Sarah. Okay, Chris hasn't joined us yet. Is anybody else bringing apologies from colleagues? I can't see any hands or any voices. Thank you. Then if we can note those as apologies for attendance. If I can move on to item 25, which is minutes of the last meeting. I'm sure you've all had a chance to read through them. First of all, can I ask if there are any factual corrections that colleagues would like to make? Can't see. Hi, Shirley. I can't see any hands going up for factual corrections. Then, if I may, I will accept the minutes as a factually accurate record of the meeting, and at the next opportunity, I will formally sign them into the relevant folders and files. Can I quickly run through matters arising from the last meeting? I hope you'll note that the matters arising now come as not only the last page of the minutes of the previous meeting, but also as a little agenda item as well. So 25.1, the 4 matters arising that we had from last period, to include a Christmas tree chart, a nice formal presentation in the revenue monitoring report. I note, Catherine, that we're suggesting that will be available in March. It's not available at this one. Fine. Okay, thank you. Lucian, thank you for moving the special schools in the membership list so that we can be clear when we are voting who sits in which particular category. Hi, Ian. And Morag, I think you're going to help us on item 33 a little bit later on the F40 group. And I note, and thank you again, Lucian, in the just behind the membership of schools forum, we now have a list of the task and finish group membership, which I'd like to see kept in there so that everybody's aware who sits in which of each of those groups. Has anybody else got anything that they've seen from the minutes of the last meeting that they would like to raise as matters arising? There are no hands going up. Lucian, I wonder if we could specifically add the consultation onto the July forward agenda. I know it's a little in advance, but the consultation is mentioned in the minutes of the last meeting. We had a little bit of a hiccup last time round. Let's make sure by making an agenda item that we have it on the July list so that we have plenty of time to prepare and understand how we're going to engage schools across the trust. Hi, Kerry. How we're going to engage schools across the trust as we head towards the consultation in October or late September, early October. Thank you. If there are no other matters arising, can I move on to item 26, declarations of interest? So can I ask if anybody has any declaration of interest for an agenda item today that they haven't previously declared? Again, I can't see any hands going up, so I think we can move on. Lucianne, how do we do an annual review of declarations of interest, given there's sort of a slight role to the to colleagues joining as members of this meeting? Yeah. Okay, and you're happy that, for example, annually we don't have to run through a process that just reaffirms or reconfirms or adds to a declaration of interest? Yeah. Okay, then let's you and I take that offline, and we'll have a chat about whether that's an appropriate step to take. Thank you. If I can move on to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is item 27. Catherine, I think we're going to be leaning on you a lot today in Lynn's absence. If you could take us through, please, revenue monitoring report.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right. So this obviously report's just to note you will have noticed there's not many changes in this month. There's been no material changes from the report in December, and the way that the publishing deadline was for these reports and our reporting timetable and the Christmas holidays and leave, not much has changed at all. But the only thing that I have changed in there is the updated forecast for the growth fund. So we've just got updated figures for the new St Cecilia School that should have opened this month. So that's the only thing that has actually changed, and there's nothing else to report on any of the blocks at all for revenue monitoring.
Okay. Andy, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, Paul, thank you ever so much. Thank you ever so much for the details sent through. At the moment, we've not had any confirmation from the local authority for how many places they would wish the schools to take for 23-24, although there are numbers there. I wondered if, just to make sure that there's still, we haven't been asked yet in terms of discussions about how many places we would like to take.
So for growth for next year, Sal, have you got an update on that?
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. What I will do is I'll flag that up to our admissions and pupil place planning officers and make sure that we are in contact with schools regarding numbers of places that we would like you to take. I'm sorry that you've not been contacted so far, but I will follow that up.
Thanks, Sal. Thanks so much. I think lots of discussion, but no actual sort of numbers or confirmations yet.
Okay, Shirley.
And Sal, can that go to all schools, not just the schools who are taking the students, so that everybody knows where the students are going and the impact it may have on their schools as well? So if there's just conversations with one or two schools, then the rest of us don't know what's going on. And then in terms of this paper, then it goes back to people not being transparent in what's happening. So that's why I think we're all asking for those numbers, so we all know where those children are likely to go, because that does impact each school individually as well in terms of their planning process at the time of year.
Absolutely, Shirley. I suppose just the health warning with that is obviously as we're getting into those discussions with individual schools about particular numbers, that's not guaranteed right from the outset, and so things may change as we go through those conversations. So what we want to be clear about in terms of being really transparent is being able to provide you all with the numbers that have some confidence behind them. You know, not much point in you planning against a certain set of numbers if those change as our negotiations with individual schools go on. But yeah, at the earliest opportunity, we will share with everybody what those numbers are looking like across the system to enable and support your planning.
I mean, we're 6 weeks from offer day, Sal, aren't we? So I think there must be some idea going on in the background as to where those offers are going to be. So I think, we are 6 weeks. So I understand that we'll have quite concrete information, 1st of March, really, when the offers go out. But equally, for planning purposes now, then it would be useful to know where we're at. And like Andy says, if people are taking extra people, they need to know for planning and recruitment as well. So it's 6 weeks to offer day, so we should be there. Thanks, Sal.
Thanks, Sal. Thanks, Shirley. Andy, any other questions on the revenue monitoring report to Catherine? Can't see hands going up. And Catherine, it would be, I'm sorry, it's extra work for you. If we had a variant, if we have got a variance month to month, it would be really helpful to see where it's come from. Just listening to, I think what you were saying, or yes, I think you said, the incremental 85k that we're seeing in the revenue monitoring you're suggesting is coming out of St Celia's. Yeah, and it would be helpful, I think, to have a column alongside if there has been a variance so that we can see where that variance is. Yeah, so the little 85k line that says this is what the difference is, so we could identify where it comes from. That would also apply, presumably, if the numbers were to change following Andy and Shirley's comments, we would also then see that by the numbers changing in the column that you have at the moment for 22-23.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is it 22-23? Is it 23-24? So is the column heading should be 23-24? Minor issue. I'm sure we can sort that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at some stage, again, longer term, and I appreciate you guys have got no time. I can see that you are already predicting the 24-25 type figures. Is there any reason why we couldn't have a column on the right hand side that showed what you think at this stage 24-25 is going to be? That then gives us a picture compared to the DFE funding that we are getting to understand whether we are even in line or not even close to being in line with our requirements for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I could probably have included that in the schools block report, because we know what we're needing for that for growth next year, what we're taking and our overall pot, and we do have some idea, but it's still always all moving, so yeah. I didn't include it this time just because it wasn't finalized, but yeah,
lovely, thank you.
Definitely include that.
If there are no further questions, I'm not seeing any hands up or microphones coming off. If there are no further questions to Catherine on revenue monitoring, Sal, can we move on to item 28? High needs block, DSG management plan and safety valve update. Let's go for it.
Of course, Chair, thank you very much. I think similar to Catherine's opening, given the period of time since we last reported to Schools Forum, given that there's been the Christmas break in between that, there is limited change in terms of significant, substantial change to what's been reported, as we have just been refining our proposition in readiness for submission. Hopefully colleagues have had a chance to read the paper. You'll note from that our final submission date, or our proposition submission date, is this Friday. And so colleagues are frantically working in the background to do those final finessing of our proposition during this week. We will then meet with safety valve colleagues from the DFE on the 24th of January, where they will provide us feedback on our proposals. So all of the work streams, all of the activity that I've shared with Schools Forum and Jonathan shared with Schools Forum in previous reports. Within that feedback meeting, we're likely to undergo some constructive challenge around our plans and around our thinking, in order that DFE and ESFA colleagues have confidence in the propositions that we're making. If there are any elements that they believe need additional tweak or additional amendment to, we will then have until the 3rd of February in which to do a finalisation of the proposition, and 3rd of February would be that submission date. Beyond that, the safety valve team will then determine whether they believe our proposition is acceptable in order that they put it forward for ministerial decision and ministerial agreement or not. So we're kind of in the last flurry of activity leading up to a safety valve agreement. What is helpful is that we have been having weekly conversations with the DFE, with the ESFA colleagues on the run-up to the Christmas break and continuing now. And the soundings, whilst it's not a confirmation, but the soundings that's coming from our DFE advisor and from finance colleagues in the ESFA is that they are positive about the distance we've travelled, the types of proposals that we're putting in. What's interesting is that we are setting out a profile of mitigated actions that should release for us a saving in costs of about £57 million over the period of the 6-year programme that we are seeking. What that will do in terms of both our cumulative deficit, which we anticipate will be £40 million at the end of the 6-year programme, we will be seeking a 50%, or we are seeking a 50% contribution from the DFE towards that cumulative deficit. And the council, through the development of an equalisation reserve, will also fund 50% of that cumulative deficit. So by the year 6, or within year 6 of the programme, we will have been brought ourselves back into a balanced budget position on the DSG, predominantly high needs block, but also will have cleared the cumulative deficit that we've accrued. We'll see this both in this paper and the next paper. We currently have a £10 million cumulative. We're looking at £6 million in this year. So at the end of this year, we believe that we will have a £16 million cumulative deficit, and that will continue to grow over the course of the 6-year period, but grow at a slower level. And then through the contribution of the equalisation reserve and from the DFE, we will be able to clear that cumulative deficit. And at the same time, through the implementation of the key work streams that have been outlined in previous reports, will bring down the cost of delivery against high needs block, and therefore bringing us towards at that 6-year point, that balanced budget position. So in essence, that's the proposition that we're putting forward to the safety valve team. Like I say, we have been hearing positive noises, but clearly that's not a confirmation as yet, because that comes from a ministerial decision at some point in the very, very near future. The other thing to recognise is that whilst on this particular paper, it's still showing a contribution of the 0.5 transfer that we submitted a disapplication request for. We've subsequently, and whilst it's still in the paper that's with Schools Forum, because I haven't managed to amend it yet, what we are now doing is working on the premise that that will not be approved, and therefore we'll be taking that out of the budget arrangements from the high needs block, from the block transfer, and that will be made up through the equalisation reserve. So the bottom line doesn't change for us, but we don't believe that our disapplication request will be approved by the Minister, and therefore we're not accounting for it in what we are presenting to the safety valve team. So just to give colleagues confidence in that, even though it's showing in that little table within the paper, and that's purely because I hadn't had the time to update that table.
Thank you, Sal. Karina, you've got a question?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Sal. That's really good news, Sal, and particularly about the 0.5%. If they were to approve it, would you still take it and then look to take it in future years?
I think in future years, hopefully in terms of the ongoing, and as Paul says, starting to think through consultations earlier, we are still predicting within our projections that we would seek the block transfer into high needs block as part of our safety valve proposal. But in future years, that will continue to be subject to the consultation arrangements that we already have in place. So we recognise that's not guaranteed, but we are making a working assumption that going forward we would take that into account. In terms of the disapplication that we've just put in, to be frank, Karina, we've to all intents and purposes been heavily encouraged not to assume that this application will be approved.
Okay.
All indications are that the current minister will not seek to approve disapplication requests that haven't been approved at schools forum. Okay. So it's really unlikely that the 0.5% is going to be approved. Okay. If it does, it will be as much a surprise to us as it is to you, to be perfectly honest with you, Karina.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Sal.
Other questions from colleagues? I'm not seeing anything. Sal, if I could, thank you. Whilst at the last meeting you presented a great presentation around the strands and how they were working together. This is the first time I've certainly seen any numbers that show over the next 4 or 5 years how things will move. And as you know me when it comes to numbers, it's my I love looking at these things. Thank you for them. Really get it. Really cool. Can I just ask a couple of questions, and it may be you want to pass across to Catherine. It may be that we need Lynn to answer some, so forgive me. Effectively, it is likely that you're suggesting the high needs block budget spend for next year, although I know we don't have it yet, is in the 36.2 million range. That looks to be the number you've got in there. I'm sure there's some bits and pieces to be sorted out, but that's the sort of envelope that you're looking at and that we hopefully will see at our next meeting, which is a 4 million-ish quid growth on this year's expected spend, let alone what we're getting in. Yeah.
Yep.
There's a line in there called spend of DSG growth fund reserves, 86,000 this year and 375 next year. I couldn't see either of those in the figures that we're looking at in the growth fund. Could somebody sort of point me in the direction of those?
So yeah, I can answer that, Paul. The growth fund, because it kept moving, I think the figures that are in that report are slightly wrong, but we've got the 406,000 altogether that's in the reserves we've got for growth. So whatever we don't spend this year will carry forward to next year. So it's just those. So it's just split over the 2 years, the reserve that we've got for growth.
So what we're trying to show is not the funding that will go to the high needs block, but we're trying to show the impact of all spend on the DSG reserve balance.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great
yeah.
explanation.
Safety valve is everything, all DSG.
Yeah, exactly. As Catherine says, one of the things we need to note is that safety valve is about bringing the DSG to a balanced position, albeit the highest element of the deficit is held within the high needs block. But from a safety valve perspective, from a DFE and ministerial perspective, it's the DSG that we are looking at in its totality.
Thank you. I note that in your year 2, 24-25 compared to 23-24, in 25-26 compared to 24-25, you're predicting a 1.2 million drop in the spend envelope. Just roughly, can you share with us what are those mitigating actions that are going to see the spend drop by 1.2 million effectively in 2 years' time, less than 3 years' time?
Again, I don't know whether Catherine wanted to jump in.
So I was just going to say it's all the workflows that we're putting in, isn't it? All the work streams, the new special school, things like that we're just bringing in.
What we're currently doing, as I say, we're finalising our proposition at the moment in readiness for Friday. Part of that is about double checking what our anticipated savings are likely to be against each of the 20 odd work streamlines that form our proposal. And those, if colleagues want to go back to the last Schools Forum report, that details each of those work streams, just as a reminder. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we've got a confidence level about what we are likely to see as the savings impact against each of those work streams, and therefore plot those out across the 6-year period, which is what has kind of fed our profiling of those savings and therefore the budgets going forward. We're still going through that triple checking of that this week, because we've absolutely got to get that crystal and right for our submission on Friday. Beyond the approval, I'm sure that what we'll be able to come back with in March is a much more detailed paper that says this is what has been agreed. Because even beyond our submission on Friday, there, as I say, up until the 3rd of February, there is still element of scope for tweak and adaptation at the behest of DfE before we might get the approval. So by March, we ought to be able to come back to Schools Forum to say, yes, we've formally got the agreement. This is what it looks like. This is how we will be monitored, the KPIs, etc., both in terms of delivery performance, but also in terms of the fiscal impact. Or we'll be coming back to March, hopefully not, and I want to be positive, but I do have to flag it. Or we'll be coming back in March and saying, unfortunately, we weren't accepted as safety valve authority. However, we still need to carry on with the actions and the activities that are identified, because one way or the other, regardless of an investment of £20 million, we still need to address our deficit issue in Wokingham and our balanced budget issue in Wokingham, given that they've only announced the ring fence is going to last for another couple of years in terms of the statutory instrument to hold the cumulative deficit as such. So the onus on us is still to do the activity almost regardless of safety valve. Safety valve, if we get the approval, provides for us that income injection into the borough, but it also provides for us a really, really robust monitoring arrangement and agreement with the DfE. And we'll be able to report that all much more clearly at the March, going forward from the March Schools Forum meeting.
Thank you. Karina, you have a question?
Yes, sorry, Sal. Going back to that 0.5%, sorry, I've just been re-looking at this. So are we absolutely clear that because from 24-25, you were going to be asking for 1%, weren't you?
Yes.
So that's the whole 1% you won't be asking for, and you won't be asking for the 0.5% if you get knocked back this year. It's highly unlikely.
So if we get knocked back this year, which is really, really likely that we will get knocked back, so we'll be looking to cover that by the equalisation reserve. Going forward, again, upon the advice of DfE and safety valve team, we will be seeking that 1% block transfer through the consultation exercise that will normally take place.
Okay, thanks.
We're coming back to the fact that getting ducks in a row, or whatever the right expression happens to be, as early as possible.
Absolutely.
Because it's still, I mean, there's obviously a chance it gets rejected, but if you haven't got a good argument and a good presentation,
no, absolutely, Paula, we fully recognise that, and we recognise that this year's consultation, had its clear flaws.
Fine, okay. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Sal or Catherine on the update on the management plan? If not, then Catherine, hopefully I haven't stolen too much, but if we could then just take item 31, which is the budget update, which is, I don't mean unkindly, isn't really much of an update. It's just saying it's coming. But if you could do that, please.
If it's okay, Paul, I'll take this one. And as you rightly say, it's not much of an update from the last meeting. The figures will be coming forward for the March meeting. What is of note in terms of update is that we've held the first meeting of the high needs block task finish group took place just prior to the Christmas break, and thank you to colleagues for your engagement in that. And I know Lynn is working to pull together the subsequent meetings working forward. The other thing that is noted within there, and we do recognise, is obviously the inflationary challenge that we have, and you know, the fact that with the inflationary challenge, you know, the resources that are available to us don't necessarily cover the level of that inflationary growth. So there's some really challenging conversations and challenging thinking that will need to take place as part of that high needs block group in order to bring back some proposed numbers to the March meeting. Those are the key, probably the key updates really. But again, there's nothing in there that's substantially different to the last report, or hopefully nothing in there that is of contention or surprise to colleagues really, given the current climate.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Karina, Deborah, Raj, and Sarah for supporting that that review and those figures. Are there any questions to Catherine or Sal on anything around the high needs block, either the update programme, the safety valve, or the budget that will come to us in March? Can't see any hands. Thank you. If we can move on from item, what was 31, but item 20 to item 29, please. Catherine, I think we're probably back to you, and hopefully with some input from Ian. Early years budget update.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just share my screen. So we got our rates through just before Christmas, and it's good news for Wokingham. They've set a cap on what they've increased the 3- and 4-year-old rate by and the 2-year-old rate by, and we're at the maximum. So we've got the maximum increase that we could possibly have. And we've also, part of our funding is maintained nursery school supplementary funding, and that's increased massively as well, as you can see from this table. So it's good news for us. We're still working through the modelling. We're hoping to set up a meeting next week, the task and finish group, so that we've got something to actually take to the task and finish group to say, this is what we've been modelling so far. What do you think? And we can discuss that with Ian and Kerry and Karen as well. So yeah, so that's it basically. So we've it's looking good for us. We've got much more money in than we had this year. So yeah, it's just working through what we need. I think I put in the paper as well as things that we need to discuss at our meeting, just so everyone knows what we need to talk about.
Okay, Ian, any comments, particularly given your major interest in this area?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, no, I agree with Catherine. It is good news that it is a significant increase, and I hope that translates straight to the providers. I do think it's great that the DfE have finally sorted out the maintained nursery school supplement, because I think we've been badly affected by that because of the fair position we were in 5 years ago when this all came in. So no, that's good news. I look forward to the group meeting.
Yes.
Karina, I'll come to you in a second. Kerry, any comments from you as well, given your interest?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute. So.
Doesn't seem to matter how many times you press it, does it? I agree. It very much is a positive position to be in, and it's just looking at how that transfers to the settings, both ourselves and the settings as a whole. Ian and I have often talked, and we know that I'm in a very strange position, because while I want to, flag there for all of the early years providers and would always do so, we are the only maintained nursery school in Wokingham. In other boroughs, there are a number, and so in some ways, what we have had to be provided with over the years, that was a legal requirement, has impacted on other settings. So there's always been a you know, an edgy moment when I'm in these meetings. But yeah, we would very much like to see how that transpires to us and to the settings as a whole. So I know we're trying to get a date in, aren't we?
Yeah, next week, hopefully. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll get that in the diary. Thank you.
Karina?
Yes, sorry for my ignorance. Can you just explain a bit more about what the Maintain Nursery School supplementary funding is, Catherine, please?
That is a very good question. Yeah, it's just additional funding that they get because they have like a head teacher, and that's just to sort of provide funding for that, isn't it, Kerry? That's just over and above what schools get funding, obviously in the schools block, but obviously Ambleside just get the funding through the early years block funding. They don't get anything else. So this is just to help the Maintain Nursery
School.
School.
Ambleside. It's not
Yes.
for nurseries that are in maintained schools. It's just
No.
perfect.
No.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, there's another thing that we have to think about. The Teachers Pay and Pension Grant that's been rolled in only affects maintained nursery classes and your school, Kerry. So they've included that in the maintained nursery school supplementary funding for you. But for maintained nursery classes, the way that 5p that they've added in, we need to find out a way to target the maintained nursery classes, because I think otherwise you're going to miss out on funding for those that have got nursery classes in schools, in maintained schools. So we need to think about that when we're looking at the modelling.
Catherine, so are you saying that the TPPG is only for maintained?
It's to fund qualified teachers, isn't it? So I know some settings do have that as well. So it's somehow how we can put it into the formula that will target those settings.
In the formula already, we already have a supplement for settings that employ qualified teachers. So we do actually have that in the formula.
Yeah, but if we have that and apply it across to everybody, that would be less going to the maintained nursery classes, and they won't get as much funding as if the grant was separate like it is now. So it's just trying to weigh that up.
The technical note for all of this isn't very clear. No. And the problem is that they've included the TPPG into the overall formula, which is based on the overall PTE count as well.
I know.
So it's implied that it's for everybody.
I know.
And that may need some clarification. If you're thinking that it's just maintained nurseries or maintained classes, it may need some clarification from the DFE, because the formula is based on total PTEs.
Exactly. Yeah, I think. Sorry, Kerry.
I don't know what the rules are, Ian. I'll be absolutely honest. Regarding the pension payments and how you support pensions outside of the maintained class, you know, so obviously maintained schools and nursery schools are, you know, obviously support the pension payment. So I don't know how that works in a not a non-maintained setting. So I don't have obviously in my previous settings when it wasn't a maintained nursery school, there was no payment into any pension fund, whether that was support staff or teaching staff. So I don't know how the land lies now, because I've been here, well, longer than I'd like to mention now. So it's been a long time since I worked outside the maintained sector.
I think
is that possible to clarify, Catherine, then from the DFE?
I was going to say, I think our early years team were actually in the meeting with the DFE yesterday. So I need to catch up with them just to see exactly what happened, because I think that was raised at the meeting yesterday.
If we could feed that back into your next task and finish group meeting. I noticed, and I've asked this, the provider reserve fund. Is this the new thing that we are using for want of a better word, excess DFE grant compared to what we've allocated, or is this a different fund?
Yeah, so the provider reserve fund we always have, and that the hardship fund that we're still putting together was the reserve that we had left from last year.
Yeah.
So we're holding that back, that pot of money back to look at that, to help what we call it a hardship fund. But going forward, we still need that provider reserve fund for any new settings that come on board and an increase in pupils and for going forward. So we still need that going forward, but this is the hardship fund, is for the money that we're holding on to that wasn't spent last year.
And where are we with agreeing a process for allocation, questioning, whatever the right thing happens to be to grant that to nursery settings?
Sal, I don't know if you've got an update at all.
I'm afraid I haven't got a detailed update other than I know that it's a work in progress. What I will do, Paul, is I'll go to our early years lead, Elaine, and get an update that hopefully we can provide with the minutes of this meeting.
Okay, if you could please. And perhaps if we could put it on the agenda for the March meeting to understand where we are going with it.
Absolutely. If we detail it as a matter arising from this meeting for us to report in on the development of that scheme.
Thank you. I noticed the words clawback, which scare the living daylights out of me when we've got such a deficit. Why might there be a clawback, a DFE clawback on the provider reserve fund?
Does say on the provider reserve fund? It's just overall, if we get provisional funding based on the January 20 for next year, we've got it based on the January 22 census, the head count, and then they update it for January 23, and then they update it again for the following January. So if they've given us too much, they take some back, but if they've not given us enough, then they give us more. So it's sort of like we get the funding through on the actual hours that are.
Okay, so it's not a clawback of unspent money. It's a rebalancing of the money that they should have given us, as opposed to the money that we thought we were going to get.
Exactly.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because clawback scares.
I know.
Never so good. Great. Any other questions to Catherine or Sal or Kerry or Ian on the early years budget update? Can't see hands going up. So thank you for that, Ian, Kerry, and it's Karen as well who helps you, isn't it, on the TNF group. Thank you for your continued work on that, and look forward to hearing from you at the March meeting with what hopefully will be an agreed budget.
Hopefully, thank you.
I'm sure it will, Ian. That's great. Item 30, please, central services budget. Again, yes. Catherine, I think we're in your hands.
So so we bought this paper last month, so the only thing is just updating, because we actually have our final allocation in, so we had a slight increase with what we thought we were going to get. Majority of that's gone to the copyright licenses that the DFE pay for all of our schools. So what we said we would do with any balance, we'd add it to the statutory and regulatory, can't say it, duties line, which is what we've done. So it's just, we've done what we've said we would do. So it's just basically so that's what we've done. And I think we agreed it last time, didn't we? We voted last time. So it's just an update to say that's what we've done.
Thank you. And in fact, we did, I'm sure Lucianne would confirm, but we voted on this last time. We agreed it with the proviso that you would just move that little bit of money in and out of that one line. Are there any questions for Catherine on the central services schools budget? There don't seem to be any. I wouldn't underplay the fact that on page 43, you've got in sort of italics a smaller font than everything else. The total cost of central services is way more than you're allowed to take by DFE. I think that's an important statement to make.
Yes. There's a contribution towards what we're spending.
Indeed. I'd almost start with the headline saying it costs £2 million, and we're in quotes only getting £1 million of that from by way of DFE grants. Okay, thanks. If there's nothing further on item 30, we're moving at a hell of a pace. We've done item 31. If we could move to item 32, please, where we will be taking a vote. This is the main schools block budget submission. Again, Catherine, over to you, I think.
Yeah, get bored of my voice. Okay, right, so we got our final allocation just before Christmas along with everything else. We need Schools Forum to approve it today, and we'll submit to the SFA by next Friday is the deadline for us to submit that. We got the final allocation on the 16th of December. I'll just show you the table of the difference between what we were originally modelling, what our estimate was, and then what our final actual allocation was. And then on the 20th of December, we actually received the APT, the tool that we use to actually work out all the budgets. So I was busy working around Christmas to try and get them all in. So the model takes into account everything that was agreed through the schools consultation. So we've got the 0.5% for MFG. We've used the minimum national funding formula rates against each factor. We've increased the notional SCN amount. We've used the extra factors that were the most popular through the consultation. For the growth fund, which we'll bring to the next meeting, the detail of that, like we said earlier, we've carried on using the minimum per pupil level for the calculations, and we've added an inflationary uplift for the new and growing schools calculations because that's not been increased since 18-19. So what we did was we looked at how the minimum per pupil level had increased since 2021, and the average cumulative increase was 15%. So we thought that was a reasonable amount to add on to those rates for growing school class calculations. I think I've said in here that we haven't received a response for our DIFS application for the all through school, but we since have, and that was approved. So the model in here, the figures in here have already taken that into account. So that's already in here, and we haven't done the 0.5% transfer, so that's not in here. So the full amount's gone through to schools, apart from the growth fund. So what we decided with the growth fund, because we still need quite a lot for next year, and we still got that little bit that we're going to carry forward to next year. The 1.6 that we got in, we're going to keep that, and because I think last year we didn't take, we had 1.6 in and we had 1.5 that we kept back. But this year we're going to keep exactly what they've given us and allocate that to the growth fund. But everything else is going out to schools through the formula. Oh, and something else I put in here as well is just about the mainstream schools additional grant. So that's just additional funding that's going to be going out to schools over and above this school's block allocation as well. So so like the supplementary grant this year that schools got this year, that's been rolled into the baseline for next year. We've got another grant that's coming in next year that'll be rolled into the baseline for 24-25. So lots of extra funding getting agreed. So these are, I've just put in there the rates of how it's going to be calculated, but schools will find that out this term, and then you'll get it next financial year in 2 tranches. And one thing to say as well is, so this is all what schools will actually get based on all of that formula if it's approved. Everyone gets an increase apart from the schools. There's 11 schools that have had a decrease from this year, but that's just because they've had a drop in pupil numbers, a significant drop that's meant that they've not had as much funding that they have for this year.
Thank you, Catherine. Darren, do you want to thank you to you and the team for supporting Catherine and working through things. Have you got some comments you'd like to share with us?
No, just thank you very much to Catherine for all the work that she's done before the holidays and during the holidays on it. Lots and lots of work there. Everything's really, really clear. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Darren. It was a bit of a weird one, wasn't it? It just seemed like we didn't meet again since, but yeah. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Then can I open for questions to Catherine or to the Task and Finish group on these figures before we talk about moving to a vote? See, Catherine, you and the team have done such a good job. We're not getting questions. Forgive me, but if I go back 4 or 5 years, we would spend the whole meeting going through this. Thanks for the clapping, Darren. We go through the whole meeting just talking about this thing. Excellent work, thank you. One little quick question on that, the MSAG, that new one, will that go directly from ESFA to the schools, or will it come through in the funding and then go out from the local authority effectively?
Academies will get it through from the ESFA, and then maintenance will come to us and we'll give like other grants. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, if I can't see any hands up or questions, then what I'd like to do is move to a vote, please. And for clarity, we are voting on agreeing that this document, or the figures in this document, are those that the local authority will send through to DFE as the schools block budget for 23-24. And I'm going to go down our list. Do you know, I'm going to do it in a different sequence because I always come to Carol first. It just seems a bit unfair that Carol is the one that's always so first. So in a slightly different sequence, but I will go through our voting list and ask you each in turn to state your vote. Luciane will make a note of it, and then that will be consolidated into our minutes. So, Ian, Ian Thomas, if I can start with you, please. Do you vote for or against the budget as presented?
Vote for, please.
Thank you. Sarah?
For, please.
Thank you. Chris, on behalf of welcome. Chris, on behalf of Amanda.
Yeah, for, please, Paul.
Thank you. Liz, I didn't see Liz on the line, so Liz is not there. Brian?
For, please.
Thank you. Karina?
For, please.
Carol?
For, please.
Thank you. I didn't see Ali. Ali hasn't joined us today. Julia?
For, please, and thanks, Catherine.
Right. I don't think I've seen Phil on the call either. Ben's not on the call. Darren?
For, please, Chair.
Thank you. Andy?
For, please. Thank you.
I'm Paul. I'm voting for. Shirley?
Yes, for, please.
Thank you. Deborah?
For, please, Paul. Thanks, Catherine.
And then Kerry? Kerry? No. Hello, Kerry. I'll come back to Kerry. Ian?
For, Paul.
Thank you. Morag?
For, please.
Thank you. Sal?
For.
Thank you. And Paul Gibson's not on the call, I don't think. And just come back to Kerry. I can see she's there, but she may have popped out for grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. Hello, Kerry. No. Then at the moment we can. Oh yeah, there she is. There's a cat. Hi, Kerry. Are you for?
Hi,
again?
I'm sorry. I just had to turn away. There was someone who came to see me quickly. I apologise. I've missed the last couple of minutes.
It was whether you vote for or against the budget as presented for 23-24.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Thank you all. That is absolutely unanimous. And again, Catherine and the Task and Finish group, wonderful, amazing that we can get that done compared to where we were several years ago. Really good work. Thank you very much indeed for that. If there's nothing further on item 32, Morag, could we move on, please, to an update from you, perhaps on the F40 group?
Yes, certainly, Paul. I'll keep it brief. It's a group that we've joined recently. It represents, I think, about 35% of the total of pupils in areas where although there's the application of the fairer funding for schools, there are areas where there are anomalies and it's not quite as fair as it should be. And this pressure group is trying very hard to remedy that. So we're now part of this. It means that we get regular updates on school funding and various things through emails, which, just while I'm mentioning it, I don't know, Paul, if members might like to receive these, or perhaps you and I can chat about that later, because I can forward a link if you like. It's just a good way of making sure that our voice is there amongst the lowest awarded local authorities. So hopefully we can learn.
It's a good idea. Let's talk with Luciane how we can best achieve that.
Absolutely, thank you. So that's it, really. Very briefly, it's hopefully a good way forward, and certainly a stream of information which we'll find useful.
Do you meet frequently? Is there a sort of a once a quarter or a once a half year or type frequency to meetings?
I don't have that level of detail in front of me, but there are weekly emails, so I can find out about that and let you know if that's all right.
Excellent. Sal, you got a question?
Not so much a question, Paul, but in support of Morag's input there, just to say, if it's helpful to colleagues, we could put a little briefing note together around F40. It is really positive that the council's taken the opportunity to join and be part of the lobby group. You know, we're third least funded local authority in the country, and therefore any voice to ministers around the challenge that we face as a result, and therefore thinking through pardon the phrase, fair funding formulas is really important. So I'm more than happy if colleagues would like to just put together a little short briefing on what I thought he is, if that's helpful to support the input that Morag's given us.
I personally think it'll be very helpful. Thank you for offering that. I just note that it's another item on your workload. But yes, thank you. but Ming no doubt will pick that up on your behalf. So thank you for volunteering him.
One way or the other, Paul. We'll get something to you. I've got a few weeks left.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Morag. Any further questions from Morag? Great, lovely. Thank you. That's a great approach. If we can, within an hour, if we can move from item 33 to item 34, which is the forward plan, on page 55 in your items, there are the 4 regular or pretty much regular items on there. Hopefully, as Sal has already spoken about, the DSG management plan update will have greater detail following the series of meetings that are going to happen with DFE over the next period of time. That would be good. And I think we added today the early years hardship fund approach, whatever the right words happen to be, which I'm sure Luciane can work with Catherine and Ian to get the right words, and then ultimately have something presented at the March meeting. Are there any other major items that colleagues would like to see on the forward agenda for our March meeting? Again, I can't see, there are no hands and no microphones coming off. And for our July meeting, we've talked about including, very specifically including I don't know what it's called, a pre-consultation paper, so that we understand how we're going to approach the consultation, which will take place in the fall of 23. Okay, if there are no further items on the forward plan, that's item 34. I'm going to move to an any other business. First of all, I've got one for any other business. Some of you may have noticed we have 2 vacancies for membership of School Forum, a maintained primary school rep and an academies rep, preferably from the secondary phase of academy work. That isn't necessary. It just needs to be somebody from academies. If we could ask, I know, Brian, that you've picked it up occasionally to try and push to find a primary rep, but given we are taking, in quotes, relatively important decisions in terms of safety valve and other bits and pieces that are going around this, it seems inappropriate to have vacancies in our group. So if we could perhaps apply some pressure to find colleagues who will represent those 2 areas. Luciane, if you could work, please, with our colleagues. If we have to send out a note to everybody, it would be really good, says he, as the lone governor or trustee. It would be wonderful to have somebody who perhaps could join me as a non-teaching staff or non-teaching staff member. That would be really helpful. But if we could push, please, to fill those 2 places.
Paul, can I speak to you quickly after the meeting just about this whole? Yeah, thank you.
Sure, no problem at all. Okay. Then if I could, I'm going to run down our list, please, and ask if anybody. Andy, have you got any other business you'd like to raise?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Brian, yourself?
No, thank you.
Chris? No, I think Chris is not there. Carol?
Nothing, thank you.
Karina?
Oh, I am here. Couldn't get the. I couldn't get off the mute. No, I'm okay. Thank you, Paul.
Lovely, thanks. Thanks, Karina. I heard yours. Deborah?
Nothing from me, thank you, Paul.
And from Darren?
Nothing from me, please.
Thanks. Ian Thomas?
Nothing extra from me, thank you.
Great. Catherine, thank you for your hard work today. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
we won't tell Lynn how well you did, by the way. Okay.
Yeah, don't.
Kerry? Well, I think Kerry's Dr. Ian?
No, thank you, Paul.
Luciane, anything that we've missed off or anything that you think we should have raised and didn't? Thank you. I'll come back to you in a second, Ming. Morag
No, nothing from me, thank you.
and Julia,
Nothing from me either, thank you.
Sal,
No, nothing from me, Paul.
Sarah,
No, thanks, Paul.
and Shirley.
No, thanks, Paul.
And Prue, thank you for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to share or table at this point?
I'd like to congratulate you on your magnificent chairing, which has got the meeting done in an hour. Well done.
I think that's even a record for us. That's it's because the quality of the materials we're looking at is so good. So it's the officer team that deserve the thanks for the quality of the materials. Then if I can come back to Ming and to Sal, this is, as many of you will be aware, Sal's last meeting. On behalf of all of us, I'm sure some of you will say so personally as well. Sal, thank you very much for what you've done for us and with us over the last few years. We missed you when you went off for a year, and sad that you're only back for a short time before you're leaving again. But thank you very much for all your support. Ming, you've got some pretty chunky shoes to step into. So welcome to the team. Do you want to spend a second or two and just say hi and who you are and where you've come from? It would be helpful to us just to say hi to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. As you know, yeah, you are right. It's a big shoot to finish. I just listen very carefully, and I can see the strong commitment and collaboration in this group. It's really very impressive. Although in my last job, I think I just came from Plymouth City Council. I did a similar job, although they label the title differently, called Survey Director for Education, SEN and Skill. Very similar job for about 2 years and 2 months. And before that, I was a Deputy Director of Education, not too far from Wokingham in Hillingdon. And before that, I was in Kent County, a much bigger local authority. Yeah. My background, I was trained to be a secondary school teacher, but I spent most of my time in local authority, and I really believe in partnership, collaboration with the school and school leader. So I really look forward to working with you closely, and we'll want to meet as many as you as possible when the time's right for you. So let's really, I want to say, I think that my focus is really partnership with you, collaboration and vulnerable learner, and integrated approach to support school, how in social care education can work together to work in a way that will add value to what the school have been doing. Yeah, that's very much. I think I'm talking too much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person.
Thank you, Ming. Welcome, and I'm sure you have a lot of very experienced colleagues that you will get to know over the next period of time, and we're looking forward to your support. And again, Sal, a big thank you from all of us. Pop in occasionally, say hi. You never know. I'm sure we'll welcome you.
Absolutely, Paul, and thank you. I mean, I will say it has been a real pleasure working in Wokingham, working with all colleagues that are here on the meeting, as well as colleagues that aren't in directly within Schools Forum. I think just reflecting on your comments earlier, Paul, I think things have moved forward quite significantly, and I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all of the officers within the finance team and officers within my teams, the learning achievement and partnerships, that hopefully have really worked hard to improve that level of reporting, that level of transparency that then is presented, and I think that has enabled Schools Forum and supported to provide us the right level of challenge as well as support. And I have always felt challenged and supported within Schools Forum appropriately, which is a true testament to partnership working, really. Going forward, I wish you all well. I'm not off for another few weeks, so I'm sure that for many of us, our paths will continue to cross over the next few weeks, but it has been an absolute pleasure being part of Schools Forum in my time in Wokingham, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Sal. And thank you, everybody. Speak to you all soon in March. Thanks very much.